So, oh my goodness. Thank you, okay, for being here today to chat to me as a continuation of this project highlighting Black excellence in San Diego. So Gentry Patrick, my goodness, I have been following you. I was surprised, I think, to find out that you've been here since 2004. I've been here.
Yep.
Is that true?
That's true.
Yeah.
But I keep us, working hard. I'm like underneath the underneath.
Well, you're out. You're out now. You're out now, man. I see you live and in living color. So I appreciate you. I left UCSD in 2007, and I think we've talked about this. I left my Ph.D. actually. Right. When Tracy Johnson was there. She's now like dean up at UCLA or something. But she's
good people, and she's one of my closest friends, man. Yes, yeah.
Man, and sometimes, I think to myself, if I had known Gentry, I wonder at the time, it's just where I see you now through the eyes of me then, I'm like, man, would that have had an impact in a different way? But anyway, that's all water under the bridge. The goal is really to talk to you a little bit, about where you've been, where you're at, and where you're trying to go. If we had to frame it up in kind of a three-part conversation.
I love it.
So, if we're in a backyard barbecue, like I say, and we're hanging out, chatting and listening to vibes, and someone asks you where you're from, what would you say?
I would say South Central. I would say Compton Watts. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. That's where I'm coming from. Absolutely. Okay.
All right. And and
I've been here, like you said, I've been here for 16, since 2004, but I have so much love for my community back in LA. So I definitely want people to know, shout out to all the Los Angeles peeps, family. I still got a lot of family in LA actually. So
yeah. So how often do you get back up?
During the pandemic. We've learned how to take on this this virtual world, and that has actually allowed me to see my family more than I could schedule in a drive up there or a train ride up there. So, I try my best, but keep people safe and get shots in arms, as we were talking about.
Yeah, man. I'm the same way. So I'm from up above Santa Barbara, little town, Lompoc, California, and I was doing that same math recently, and I was like, man, I've been in San Diego as long as I lived there. I think now it's weird, to kind of establish these new roots, and even though you come from a place, to then start to kind of identify with the place that you're in. How so you exit, you go to Cal,
right?
You blip for a minute UCSF, then Harvard, then MIT. Am I getting this right?
Then Caltech.
Then
UCSD.
Got it.
I could fill it in. I saw you thread it out. Salient aspects of that, if you like.
Yeah. What were the highlights for you? So in that journey.
Right. So me, I went to a high school called King Drew Medical Magnet High School in Watts.
Yeah.
I was interested in science. I was interested in medicine. I think a lot of high achieving students, and there were many. I wasn't an anomaly.
Let me stop you just for a second. Is there almost an HBCU? Is that Drew? There's a
Charles Drew.
Yes.
Medical. Yeah. Actually, absolutely. My high school was right there, right next to that. And then so we did rotations in the hospital. We kind of interacted somewhat with Charles Drew, which used to be Drew UCLA. I think it's just Drew now. Yeah.
I actually went up there to visit.
120th in Wilmington.
Yes. And I think that was birthed kind of somewhat out of the Watts riots and whatnot, wasn't that? I think it came up.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
So that's right around from Nickerson Gardens. I lived there about a year. And I've lived all over Watts and Compton.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was very, just this smart kid who liked learning.
Yeah.
But I also was a part of a community that, for better or worse, we just strive to keep going, you know, in spite of.
Yeah.
And some of those techniques to kind of persist allowed me to like get on this trajectory and find my way here. So let me say, I had some great teachers, you know, in high school. But when I got to Berkeley, that was a culture shock, right? That was back 1988, Berkeley, People's Park, Afro House, all of that goodness there where Black Excellence was live and well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brothers and sisters from back then.
Yes.
Black and brown who were doing their thing, doing some amazing work.
Yeah.
But of course, that was before Prop 209.
Yes.
I get to Berkeley. Takes me a couple years to just get my feet and figure things out.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, it was really this idea of, oh, okay, I like this science stuff. I got into a lab, and it was a lab that actually I couldn't just. This is interesting, right? I couldn't just volunteer because that wouldn't pay me anything. You know, working in dining services, and I needed a job in a lab.
Yes.
So getting something like that allowed me to have a little stability.
Yes.
Then you just work it out and work your way back. Interestingly, I take the opposite approach when I'm talking to students. Now, you don't have to take that deficit model where you go in and you onboard with horrible grades. We can like stand you up and hold you up. Have you doing well from the beginning.
Yes.
Building that self-identity, you know. For me, my STEM and self-identity was a hodgepodge of circumstances. It all came together, right? Anyway, so get through Berkeley, get into a master's program at UCSF, and you know, because I was still interested in medicine. I think I knew I was kind of wobbling back and forth. I had, you know, didn't have good grades, but I had good MCAT scores, so I got several interviews for medical school, but I just didn't make the cut. So then I got into this program called the Research Training Program at UCSF in biochemistry and biophysics. Dr. John Watson, dear friend, amazing biochemist who has been at, you know, one of the first Black biochemists at UCSF back in the day, right?
I heard you made a call. I think I heard another interview where you were like, you were maybe not going to get in that program. You're like, look, man, I'm gonna be the one. Come on.
Exactly. Me and him had a long one. He's like, your grades. People were just like, this is a bad call on this one. I'm like, take a chance on me, Dr. Watson. Take a chance. I promise you. And you know, that's what we need sometimes, right?
Talk to me about that. As you said, techniques to persist. I wrote that down a minute ago, and like it's a little glimmer for me. And I'm curious about these techniques to persist, the will to survive, like advocating for yourself in that way. Like there's not a lot of people. That's a pivotal moment, man. There's not a lot of people that would have had the wherewithal.
I could have hung up the phone, and that would have been that. But you know, I think that's what I can connect back to my childhood. You know, surviving was just a known entity.
Part of the deal.
Young Black men. Part
of the deal.
Definitely growing up in South Central, right? In the heyday of crack and gangs. I had family members who would say, "You can't come out with us tonight. What we getting into? Right? You're the smart one. So, I did have that persistence. I don't know why I just didn't want to give up. In part, I think it was me taking hold of this, and that's real, right? But I think back at that time, it wasn't like I had something special that said, you won't give up. You know, there were many times that I can't do this. Right? But I fell in love with science. Man. Why can't that just be some salient, really powerful point? And what if we allowed students to just fall in love with STEM?
Come on,
not snatch it away from them, give them that the antithesis of nepotism with wraparound engagement. So I got on that track, got through a 2-year master's program. Then I applied to graduate school, went to Boston, went to Harvard, and that was great. Finished up pretty quickly because I was really motivated. Had an amazing mentor. Actually, all 3 of my mentors, and I've mentioned this in many interviews, I've had 3 women mentors. They were, none of them were Black or brown. But they were amazing advocates, fierce proponent of women and minorities in science. First one was Erin Schuman, and she's now the head of Howard Hughes. She's the president of Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Other one was Li-Huei Tsai, who's now they were all HHMI investigators. Li-Huei is at Pickrell Center in MIT. She was at Harvard at the time. Erin Schuman was at Caltech, another Howard Hughes investigator. She's now a Max Planck director in Frankfurt. Bottom line, they were fierce proponents of my career. And people have asked me why you had 3 women faculty, right? As your mentors, your advisors. Serendipity, but also just an understanding. I think, women they're still having their go at breaking the ceiling and getting into places of leadership and representation. And so I think I just was drawn to that, right? Oh man,
I've noticed that parallel often, positionally in culture, like the Black male situation and, often the white female or just female situation, there's all sorts of parallels and analogies and natural coherence. So
And so I think I want to bring up a couple salient points. One of the things that was really important for me was them sharing their story with me and actually getting a little granular with it. And it's not all like, we don't de novo create ourselves into full professors, right? We take our lumps, stumbling blocks, and they pushed me and they pushed me and pushed me. And so I really appreciate that. I get back, then I start going for jobs. And someone asked me, why'd you take a job at UCSD? And I said, because they gave me a job.
Yes.
Because I interviewed several places, but it took me to UCSD was my last interview. I interviewed at places like MIT, Columbia, top-notch places. But I think I kind of figured it out towards the end. And luckily, there's an amazing neuroscience community here. We'll talk a bit about my science also. But I want to bring up one thing that I mentioned. Self-identity is so important. Finding yourself, understanding and defining who you are, not just for others, but for yourself, allows you to really get on a path to do something. And great is personalized. Great is not what someone else thinks of you. Great is what you feel for yourself and for, in some cases, for your community and for your family, right? And so I get to UCSD, they give me a job, and I start my lab. And it's a tough road, right? Me in science. So I am a molecular neuroscientist. I study basically excitatory synapses in rodent models, so in mice and rats. I'm very interested in understanding, the molecular details that happen at synapses. And just so happens that I study something called protein half-life control. How long the persistence of proteins as they exist and function in time and space. And so I have been working on a pathway and studying glutamate receptors and their trafficking to and from synapses. Just so happens that these receptors are quite important. They receive glutamate from a neighboring cell. We would say a presynaptic terminal that's released glutamate, and it activates another cell. So that's how we have chemical synaptic transmission. And
I was reading through some of that before us talking, and I was just going all back because I was in a biophysical lab at UCSD in Betsy's lab, right? And so just going all the way back to all this charge gradients and thoughts about how synapse get activated and signals get sent and protein degradation and ubiquitin pathways and lysosomes. I was just like, oh man, I just remember, I used to call myself a molecular astronomer. or a cellular astronomer, because it's as vast. It's as vast and wondrous.
I like that.
So yeah.
But some of the biggest highlights of my career are really the things that I was able to do with others.
Yeah.
I'm on my 9th or 10th PhD student right now.
Yes.
That's a amazing moment to be able to have this time with individuals who spend 4 or 5 years with you, sometimes longer, to get their PhD. You're working as a team.
Yes.
I believe in the communal aspect of science and the connection to community. Actually, it's funny. I mean, I don't know if you put a timestamp on these interviews. Recently gave a fireside chat for the Salk Institute this week.
Yes.
And that was quite amazing because, they just hired their first African-American faculty member in the history of the Salk Institute. And
are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. I'm blanking on her name. I'll pull that up.
I'll flash it up. Yeah, I'll flash it up.
Yeah,
Wow.
But I'm excited for them, and I'm excited that they've kind of dug in and decided that they're going
to turn the tide a little bit. Yeah.
And what was great is that it's my experience. It's just little things, right?
Yeah.
Not that I know the answers.
Yeah.
I may have been down the road a little bit further.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they called me up and said, "Hey, could you give a talk?" I said, "You know what? Like, let's have a conversation. This needs to be something between me and the audience." I said, and better yet, they were like, "You're gonna get this guy. His name is Austin Cooley. Actually, he was on Rad Scientist also.
Austin?
Yes.
Is he a postdoc?
He's a postdoc in K. Tai's lab.
Yeah, is it brother? Black man?
Brother, yeah.
Yes, we just had an exchange online. Okay.
Anyway, he sat and interviewed me.
Oh.
And it was great. It was great because we had 2 brothers on the Zoom with about 100 folks.
Come on.
We got to get into the world of
Come on, man.
I love that mechanism. I love what you're doing here. I think there's another podcast that I haven't really dug into, but it's Conversations with a Black Man. I forget that guy.
Oh, yeah.
That's really...
Yes.
I've had these types of experiences. A couple of years ago, I sat with Hilton Owls on the La Jolla Playhouse stage. Hilton Owls
wow. Okay.
The Pulitzer Prize.
Yes.
Playwright critic and author.
Wow.
And that was just him on the stage with me.
Yeah.
Talking about, being a Black man as a scientist and him as this amazing, literary and artistic. So I love showcasing Black excellence as you're doing.
Yes. How was the change? So when you say this communal aspect, and I'm catching these notes in the mentors that you had of their humanity, their vulnerability, and their kind of holding the bar high too, as you step in, you get here, you say you picked up these notes, you start to stand into your own selfhood and your own identity, what great means to you. You show up at UCSD, they give you the gig, and you step in. And I look at 2 of the powerhouses, at least the publications when I look at them, are Goo and Scudder, right? Like those names kind of come up for me, and I think they're now off and doing their own thing in the world. But, mentoring and now becoming the person running a lab, setting a vision and saying, okay, here's how, let's do it. How was that transition? Because it's almost like parenting in a way, right? Like I laugh with friends of mine, they're pregnant, and they're all prepared. No one tells you, everyone talks about birth. No one talks to you about life after birth, and that's when it gets, you get the thing, and then you're like, what do I do with this? So you grab the ring and you're in the lab, and you get the funding, the startup dollars, and the people come in. How was that? How did you?
It was definitely an interesting transition. I was in the lab all the time. I worked countless hours, innumerous hours. I would I would get up, go to work, come home, go back to work. And sometimes it was painful, but you march towards tenure. And after that, after that, you march towards full professor, and then everything after that, right? And so, even though it was challenging, and you had imposter syndrome the entire time, and even to this day, right? But I've been able to like understand a bit more of my humanity, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Be a little bit more mindful. Like, okay, this is important, but let me pair it with other things that are important in my life. Maybe that will coalesce together to define my lane.
Yeah.
And for me, it's neuroscience and social justice.
Yes. Yeah, brother. Yeah.
So I think science and social justice have to find their union if we want to provide a better way of human health for Black and brown individuals in our communities.
Yes, sir.
It has to. They can't be an outsider that's in this, box that's like on its own. So this is a perfect pivot into the present tense. So we've talked a little bit about where you're coming from and some of your perspectives. So here in this town today, in 2021, we find ourselves February, Black History Month, Valentine's Day, President's Day, whatever you want to talk about in February, here we are. And, we still have these massive gaps and disparities in healthcare and across the spectrum of STEM and whatnot, but you are trying to make a mark in that space. So maybe tell me just a little bit about, the kind of highlights are you've got Google money in your lab doing things to increase representation in that space. But what do you see as possible maybe in the field and then particularly in San Diego as you kind of survey the landscape? Give us a little slice. Yeah. So I would say that, first of all, and this actually came up in my recent interview for this talk, and it's something that was serendipitous for me to bring up. I realized, what does change look like? And people have asked that question.
Yes.
Change is when everyone sits at the table and is included in the math problem for change, right? And for me, I really see, the STEM and healthcare professions pipeline, which means,
docs and
STEM makers in general. That has to really be, there's lots of innovation and creativity for success of these individuals, awareness, access, success. We need to see all of this, not just see it and speak the same language, right? We need people speaking the same language, whether they be the academic partners, whether they be the nonprofits in the community, whether they be the philanthropic partners or the bureaucratic machine of the institutes that we sit in. They all have to put the student first. And so for me, I've just been, tried to showcase what advocacy really looks like for these individuals and for all individuals. I know people they go back and forth with this, but for me, if we get it right, I think people have said this, if we get it right for Black folks, as my grandmother would say, Black folks.
Yes.
We're going to get it right for a lot of people, right? And so, for me, I'm happy to sit in this space and call out, this is where we need to be. And so something that's interesting, and I think I'm kind of diving in and out of your question.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah.
I've always wanted to be an example of what academic excellence and diversity is. Typically, they sit on different pages. You're a diversity administrator, and you sit on this side, and you're a consensus builder, and hopefully get something done. When you're the faculty member, you are part of the faculty. So, but if you do both of those, so my colleagues, the respect of my colleagues is really important. When I go give a talk, and I'm the only Black person of 300 people that's there. I'm telling myself I better give a good talk. So I can remember that, and if I do, what's the possibilities? So we need more people that take on that challenge, but not just do it alone, right? Did I feel like I walked along my path alone? No, sometimes it was very lonely, and even today, I realized that my thinking might be a little too what's the word? I wouldn't say advanced, but
out of the box or progressive or whatever you want to say. Yeah. I get you, man. Pushing the innovative. You know, I'm with you. I'm with you.
But I did. I had a community that helped me. People who did not know they were my mentors. I'm looking at, you know, the older white Jewish man. He doesn't know he's my mentor, but I'm taking notes in my head.
Yeah.
Not only about the science, but about how he approaches, how he engages. And so that's what people need. Well, we are examples. We're living examples of humanity. Soon to be taking the place by the next generation. So our empathy that we have for ourselves and for our community allows us to bring all the goodness of what we do together. It shouldn't be science is over here and what have you is over here, right?
So when you were thinking, you know, I see you, man, giving commencement speeches and full of life and energy and excellence and, you know, doing your publications, making your tenureship and your full professorship and like holding it down. So what you said, holding down the excellence column and this kind of advocacy, social justice, inclusion column. Where, you know, and you did glancingly talk about it for just a second, and I'm sure people often ask you kind of what are your targets in terms of doors you're trying to kick down or areas where you're trying to move the needle with regard to the social justice piece in science. Can you give me just a little slice of that? Because I know you're involved kind of ancillarily in Bill's SD squared thing. And as I sit, I'm on the other side, right? I'm at the corporate industry side, right, where lots of folks complain about representation and trying to get access to these bright young minds that might otherwise be marginalized. You in academia running programs to attract and retain and develop young minds. Can you speak into a little bit of where some of the primary levers are for you or where you all see the most impact with regard to that recruitment, retention, and development?
Right. So there's no question about the sheer talent that we have in our community, whether it be in South Central LA or here in San Diego. So that's a given. So now we need to figure out what is the balancing act and who are at the table. What entities are at the table to actually drive the change. And for me, that's where I wanted to spend my time. Call out the message of academic excellence and diversity and figure out what could I do to make impact. And for me, and I don't know, we haven't talked about this, but I started a scholarship program, which you may or may not know about. That's probably the biggest thing I've done in the last 5 years outside of my lab. And I didn't know that we had never talked about this.
No, is it Pathways? No.
This is Pathways to STEM through Enhanced Access. Mentorship. That is a program I started, I created, birthed that thing.
This is a Chan Zuckerberg,
And so for me, this is like that. When I got on about 5 years ago, I got on the road talking to philanthropy first and big nonprofits and foundations, trying to figure out what they wanted to see happen. And I was pitching a story of, I want to give students what I had. And actually, I would say things like, I think we need a scholarship program that rivals nepotism.
I've heard you say that before. I quote it. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's real talk. Right? It's like, no, you can't give these young individuals a one-off engagement and hope that they turn that into an entire new trajectory for themselves and their family. It needs to be repetitive. It needs to be workshopped. They need people. It needs to be a living, breathing thing that they develop, because we're talking about their identity and their belief in themselves. And then they become conduits to their communities. So that's the space that I sit in. Just so happens to be that I love having a conversation, a good conversation. I've typically come from a very transparent, although I've learned about how transparent you can be. You get a meeting and be like, you get a little look over, like, did someone give him the message that we don't need that level of transparency from the black man here?
Isn't it funny, those levels of appropriateness?
I thought we were. Like I left the inside out. I'm sorry, folks.
The inside out.
But but I think there's a lot of people looking to do amazing things, right? And so for me, it was go find the funds.
Yeah.
And guess what? Guess what allowed that to happen? We talked about paths, and then the amazing funding from Chan Zuckerberg Initiative.
Mm.
That did not come because I was this pioneer in the social justice space.
Yeah.
Guess why?
Yeah.
I'm a scientist.
Yeah.
The person who put me on, so to speak, for the folks here that know what that means. Was a scientist. She's like, Gentry, you have a great idea.
Yeah.
I know you as a scientist, and I'm glad you're doing this. So let's go. So that's why the need for science and the scientists to speak up. We got to step out of our labs, man. We can't just. We have to do more than just be our excellent scientists that we are. We have to also turn around and walk right into the community. I told this also.
Yeah.
I remember going to Illumina with my dean and a development officer, and I said, you guys can't just parade kids around this beautiful institute of Illumina. If you want the inner city to know know about Illumina and to have a chance, you need to tell them about their genome, and they need to understand why. And you need to be in the community doing that.
Man.
And so what do we need? We need people like you calling it out, speaking to power. We need people like me. But we also need others holding us up, because here's the thing. In typical form, someone like me will have done twice the amount of work. Twice the amount of work to get to move this boulder up the hill. And a lot of times we're just looking for that lift from others, and it's in my sense, it's come from philanthropic entities, it's come from nonprofits. I've had nonprofits who've been around for years say, Gentry, you're the first real partner I've had in UCSD, because I'm speaking the same language or something.
Well, now let's talk about this just for a second, because this thing here, what you said about pairing excellence with community and walking into Illumina with your dean and having that conversation, this confounds me straight up. So we're in the third largest biotech hub in the country. I used to sit on the board of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. They run an annual event called Light the Night. That's neither here nor there. What was shocking to me was that the primary representatives there would be folks from like Spectrum or like Sempra or SDG&E or Geico. And I was like, Johnson & Johnson's up here? All the TSRIs, Salks and Burnhams and all these various spots, but you can't get folk to come out of doors and raise their hand and rep in the community to save your life. So I can't figure out if that's just phenotypic, classic introverted science stuff, or if there's more to it, but man.
I tell you what, man, we need more people like yourself, like myself, who are helping them get there. My colleagues they're like, Gentry, just tell me what to do. I want to be a mentor. But they listen to me, right? If I was just in that diversity office, they would be like, okay. And as a scientist, I'm like, oh, here's the latest paper from Gentry, but here's also what he's doing. They're like, okay, I'm all in. Because they want to trust it, just like these communities want to fall in love with science and trust it.
Yes.
There's a little, like my cats. They have to get to know you first.
Yeah.
They're not going to just trust you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's a guy that I follow that I model, actually. You may be aware, Brian Stevenson. He does that Equal Justice Initiative. He's the Just Mercy guy.
Okay. Yes.
And all about incarceration and he's a lawyer, I think, by training, but he also established that lynching memorial in the South somewhere. He also got Google money. But talk about a boulder uphill. You know what I mean? That's a hot topic. Lots of pain and suffering and struggle in there. But he was able to put that together. But when he goes around talking about the seeds of change, he talks about proximity as kind of, he has 4 points, but proximity is his top one, like get up close. Right. You know, you hear other people, I think Brene talks about it's hard to hate people up close. You know? Right. So the more you can actually get proximate with folk, and you know, for you, it's in the halls of academia, and people see your publications and your you know, credentials. Go, okay, I can trust this. Okay, so now what? You know, help me go into this new place. And the same is true in the opposite direction. The more folks that look like you and I, and can translate that language and show up on the block or in these other places and say, okay, it's, you know, come on this way. You know. So then the trick now for me is, how do we create some of those systems? Because here we find ourselves in San Diego, and, you know, people talk about where the Black folks are at, or where are all the Black people at, you know, and so that's kind of what this Find 40 is about, right? Is mapping the community and getting a sense for, you know, is it San Diego Black Chamber or you know, there's people, I don't know if you ever did frat, but, you know, there's the Boule folks that are all like, I was not in a frat either, you know, but they're out here, you know, the HBCU folks hold it down out here. And a variety of other spots that historically have kind of represented the Black voice, the Black experience in San Diego. So that's what this is meant to do, is get a little closer and see, you know, are there equivalents to Shara's ODI, kind of, you know, or analogs, and how can we start to kind of create those relationships and move folks towards the programs that you have. Have you made any of those kind of discoveries, or have you stumbled into kind of like?
It's been it's not rocket science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not. I literally just walked into the community.
Yeah.
We're trying to come up with like, let's get this model. It's got to model it, and it's prescriptive, and you know, it's got to be assessed, and we got to get the data, and the error bars have to be. No, I just walk into the community. When I do outreach in the beginning, when I was doing outreach for my program, now I do want to say a little bit about this program.
Please.
Program, man, we had maybe 50 applicants in the first year. And now, mind you, we're giving these kids scholarships to come to UCSD. Mm-hmm. We took 12 students. The next year we took, 14, and we had about 75 applicants. The next year we had 700 applicants for 15 spots. And these are high achieving Black and brown, you know, and students coming from all over, a diverse group. It's working, but part of that is just showing up in the space.
Yeah.
City Heights knows who I am now. I give keynotes a lot, so this message going. And finding a way to activate conversation. And in some cases, it's pairing a nonprofit with a biotech or a philanthropic entity, because I can't do it all. And so I find my lane. My lane is calling out the space and holding the message and crystallizing that message so that everyone has a clarity of where we need to go. And there's a line. It's like they get on the right side of the aisle or the left side of the aisle. They know where they like, I'm standing on this side because I understand exactly what he's saying, and I want to be a part of this. And then the ones that don't, they just kind of fall off the wayside.
So tell me about that. So that's, man, the energy that came out of you as you said that, and your intention. So when you show up in space and crystallize the message and kind of say, this is what I'm saying, what does that look like? Give me a little flavor for where that happens. And what are you usually saying to folks, and witnessing them kind of go, oh, okay, I'm over here.
In some cases, it might be on, you know, talking to, you know, on boards, or being invited to boards. I remember speaking to the board of directors for Biocom 3 or 4 years ago. Now they've asked, you know, so now I sit on a working task force for them. Right. And and these are people who want to do the right thing, and sometimes it's just keeping them above that prescriptive level, and like, think about the human impact. Most people aren't using the words empathy. Like, what does it have to do with science? It has everything to do with science, because we're not going to just be doing science for science sake. We're doing science because we're changing outcomes of human health for all people, including Black people, including Black and brown people, right? So For me,
Yeah.
I've been home this message for a while. I've worked hard. Not that it's a soapbox, right? But now I walk through doors and I'm not afraid to walk through them.
Sure.
And I'm talking in spaces with deans and chancellors and across the country. And I can't do it all. And that's why I love this message that we do something today in time and space, and then we release it and say, hey, connect in. Let's connect in and make it and move it, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So tell me, so let's pivot just a little bit. I have two thoughts. One, I messaged you at one point because I'd read somewhere, I think in when you were at Cal, either DJing or something. So there's a music piece in here. Okay, let's touch on this. So what do you listen to? Well, no, here's an even better question. I ask this sometimes as icebreakers when you're introducing people. What is the album or artist that you have heard the most? Now, this doesn't mean it's your favorite necessarily. You may have just been exposed to it and you're sick of it. But what have you heard, literally, either album or artist the most, if you had to say?
The most?
Or it could be your favorite album, man. It could be your favorite album, but
Oh man. Okay, I'm gonna have to. I'm just gonna have to give an anecdote. Because I don't want people saying he can't. That's not the greatest album. I was at Porter's Pub maybe 10 years ago, and KRS-One showed up on campus, and nobody knew that he was. It was like 50 of us, and we were in a cipher around this KRS-One. He was passing the mic. I'm like walking out my lab, and I'm like, Boogie Productions.
No, this is like, this is like Twilight Zone schism. Talk about intersectionality. I can just imagine like the identity shift, the code switch that happens for you to come out of lab thinking about protein degradation.
Showing up, I show them up there, having a beer with what maybe my grad student or postdoc. KRS-One is performing that night. It's hardly anyone there. And we just stand around him and literally people get in the middle, passing the mic. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Oh man. Oh, so this is the era you come out of.
For those who are our age and know about Boogie Down.
Yes. So were you formed in that? See, for me, what happened was I came up, I was more like in middle school, like emo, man. I'm like The Cure and Depeche Mode. By the time The Far Side came out, that was when I started kind of going, oh, and then I just dropped in, I went to Northern California and all of the Vallejo, Bay Area raps, and then all the East Coast.
All right, I'll fill it in. I was definitely into hip hop and I had a little crew, a little dance crew and DJ crew at Berkeley.
Yeah.
I went from there to that space, and of course, coming out of Compton, and then hit to acid jazz. And that's when acid jazz had just hit, and it was there in San Francisco.
Okay. Right? So who do you think when you say that now? What's come up?
Man, I'm
That's okay. So maybe it's not personalities, but that vibe and that scene. You're going and checking out people free jazzing it up.
Yep. And then but like more Chiba and
I get the vibe. Yeah, I get the vibe.
And then I just moved down that trajectory. So I like all music, but I definitely have this, I love of electronic music now. And some of it's soulful. Some of it's deep house.
Deep house. So LTJ Bucum. Did you ever listen to LTJ Bucum?
No,
LTJ Bucum. I gotta send you a link. I've had that moment too of like almost not really trance, but like drum and bass. Like just if you just want to go to the club and dance and just like, come on, man, give it to me. I'm with you. I have journeyed down these roads as well. I feel you. I definitely the Thievery Corporation and Jazzanova was big for us for a little while.
Exactly.
But I would say, so for me, so it's probably Miles Davis Kind of Blue. That's like literally, you know, heavy rotation. Alexa play, blah, 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 you know, or Grant Green's Idle Moments.
Okay. No. For me, probably would have been, now I'm thinking more about that time in my life when I was, you know, in the early 90s to mid 90s, Brand New Heavies.
Oh, sorry, right? Alexa, stop. You started playing something. Okay, Brand New Heavies, yeah.
You know, that time in that space for sure.
I stay trying. You know, the hip hop thing has never left me, so I can, you know, I still try to band camp at different places. I still try to keep my ear to the curb where I can, but it's a hard job. Let me ask you this. Yeah.
Nas and.
Oh,
you know, of course. It's just like some of the classics back in the day. Interestingly, I have a 16-year-old and an 8.5-year-old, almost 9-year-old, two beautiful young women growing up. But my 16-year-old, the music today, some of it is, my age gets me. Like, the auto tune and I'm like, okay, all right.
It's tough, man. I try like all the little this and the little that. I'm like, man, is this just, tell me someone in here is kind of conscious, trying to bring a little positivity. Like, you know, it's hard to weave through. Spotify does not help me at all, man. You know what, I end up finding myself, because my son, I have an almost 14-year-old, just turned 8-year-old. And he's like a little hip hoppy dude too, but I end up going like down Christian hip hop lines because I'm trying to have it be not explicit for this little dude. But you would be surprised, man. There's some guys that wave that flag that are not overly, you know, like trying to push a message, but have some, oh man, there's a local kid named John Keith who I would like to talk to at some point that is pretty good. So, you know, in terms of hip hop, you can play in the car with people, you know, there's no idea.
I remember, I have, you know, Tracy Johnson, you know.
Yeah.
She's good friends with Gail, and I'm thinking of Gail's last name. Well, she's married to Chuck D. And so I remember Chuck came down and I like connected in with him, and I was at the office. He performed at the office. I still have the video. This is like 7-8 years ago.
What?
Me and Chuck hanging out at the office, and he killed it.
Chuck D? Public Enemy Chuck D?
Yeah.
Now, see, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, you just gotta not sleep on it.
Ooh-wee. Yeah. I've often said I don't know how people make it without music, man. Music is huge. So now tell me this for a minute. And I recognize we're up against time too. We're kind of here at the end. But when I think about what you've had to put in to get to where you're at, just personally as a human. So now just, you know, we'll come off the social justice and our favorite albums and just Gentry Patrick without any of the letters after that or the experience.
Right.
You know, what is it that sustains and propels you just on a day-to-day, just as a human being? Like, what are the things for you that are key for your wellness and your mental health and your outlook, you know?
Yeah. So I think back in the day, pre-tenure, I pushed myself without a release. I just go, because we do it, because we must, because I must, right? Now I'm definitely more mindful, and it's actually interesting. So try to live and eat healthy.
Yeah, sure.
Try to get exercise, but also it's almost I've learned a new language on how to engage myself and others around me in a healthier way. You know, being deliberate That's not a word that we learned and where I being deliberate about things and having empathy for myself. But it's actually finding the language to actually be mindful. Like mindfulness is not something that I grew up with. We just learned how to deal with levels of stress that bounce all over. But that is something that sustains. And then just clearly the idea of doing it not only for myself, but for my kids, partner. We recently got engaged. And so
congratulations. That's a milestone.
That's a milestone. And I have this innate interest. It's almost innate. The way I think of it, just making an impact in the lives of others. Someone asked me, like, what do you want to achieve? I'm not trying to do all this to achieve something for me. I get joy just from seeing others move forward. And maybe that's not for everyone. Maybe that internal drive about who they want, what they can do. But for me, that really drives me. Right? And I'm happy to stick with that. It brings me joy. And I see the fruits of my labor, right? Right? I see the impact that I can have, while also working hard to get where I've gone. Right?
It's funny you say that, because my sister last night, she was looking at some of these fine 40 things, like, you need to get out in front of those things and kind of do a little thing and say why you. And I'm like, man, it's so not about me though. Like I'm really, I would prefer not really even to appear as a personality. It's really here to cheerlead and be like celebratory of other people's experience. And I have often said that, like, I literally personally feel overjoyed. It's almost like when you watch the Olympics and you say, damn, that's what they're supposed to do. Like, they are good at that. And it's
no
like
saltiness at all.
What was that?
I said no saltiness.
Without any saltiness. Like I don't need to be jumping that pole, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to jump that bar, you know what I mean? But damn, you good at it, you know. But from a real authentic place, I mean that wholeheartedly. I sense that when you say it. And and another way of thinking about it is like when Oprah used to, like, you get a car and you get a car, like, just give, you know, like, just like lavish on people. There's something about that. Just seeing just joy at other people's joy. I hear you.
It comes down to the community for me. If I think about it, it's like, what do we want to be as humans? Where is our humanity? And can we make sure that everyone is represented in that humanity? That's what, you know, I mean, sorry to take it back to that. I know that's linked to social justice, but in reality, that's just humanity.
That's just humanity. Don't apologize to me. I'm with you. I used to say, if you have a belly button, you can't say you did anything on your own. Like, I don't care what the deal. You know, you are not here, but for someone having supported you at least in that 9-month block to get you here. You know, you got to be able to say that, regardless of how you feel about your biological. You know. I'll ask you this one last thing. Is there anything, you've said empathy a lot, and I feel like that's an often used word, but the extra piece of having empathy for yourself and your orientation to yourself and how that then extends outward. How did you come to that? Like, that's kind of advanced language, to be real with you, advanced psychological language. So did you have a moment of awareness around that, or something that kind of...
Yeah, man, I had a moment where I realized that I couldn't just go and do in spite of. I was good at it. I was like, wow, this brother can just go to Harvard, do all these things. But then you start breaking down. And if you don't and then you realize, you look back and you're like, wow, I did this, but that's some shady spots in that path. A little bit better. And then, you know, the empathy is, you know, I know all of me. And, I'm trying to think of what Brené Brown says. I'm blanking on it, but I love that quote where you know all yourself, but you still choose to kind of love yourself, right? And that's a powerful space to be, because you can move mountains with that. You don't get stuck in like, I can't do it and I don't feel good about myself. And you have real connections, and you with other people, and you actually do stuff together, right? That's how it works for me, man.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I need a little break, I just like tune it out. Get to my when things open up, I'll have you over. I'll get on my decks and we'll play some music.
Come on.
From all different.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man. I gladly
maybe we'll have to live stream it.
All right. That's a whole nother spot, man. I'd appreciate it. Hey, really, from my heart, I appreciate you taking the time. I know I've been nipping at your heels and chasing you. I really am just super inspired by you and what you're up to. So I appreciate you.
Inspired by you and what you're doing here. And I'm inspired that, it's a collective thing, right?
Yeah, man. Yes. Yeah. I'm glad to be here with you.
It's not so lonely then, right?
Yeah, man. Whew. Right? Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You got it.
And have a good rest of your day, man.
Hey, you do the very same. Take good care.
All right, take care.
All right, peace.